This is March.
You know what time it is yet again. It's March Madness. Another college basketball season has gone by, and what a season it was. One that took us from Feast Week, where we thanked college basketball, and had a Maui tournament for the ages, and a regular season where the SEC dominated and the ACC was really bad. And now it's all about to be decided. We've still been hashtag locked in March, and it's been a grind to get this all out for you guys like I do every single year. But we're still alive and well. Now, as always, I record this video before the bracket comes out, so I don't exactly know the seeding. I just want to give everybody a team-by-team breakdown so you can make up your own mind, because that's the important thing about March Madness, is making your own bracket, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Every single year, everybody gets things wrong, so I want you to make your own decisions without any sort of bias, obviously, when it comes to making the bracket. Now, before I begin, the only thing I ask is that you follow me on X or Instagram. Both of those are linked below, and now let's get into every single team in the 2025 NCAA tournament. I would like to start off my video with Duke. Yes, the Blue Devils are leading off one of these videos for the first time, actually, and I think this is probably one of the best Duke teams I've ever seen personally, and it's led by star freshman Cooper Flagg, one of the best college basketball players I've ever seen, honestly, and I feel like it's just because he does everything so well. This is a very young team when it comes to like their star players, but they also have a really good mix of older players as well that have transferred in. I feel like they've been great offensively, they've actually been really good defensively. That's where Cooper shined. I think this truly is the best Duke team that I've honestly ever seen, and I think that should be high praise. I think that Jon Scheyer has done a really good job with this group. Not necessarily their fault the ACC has been really bad. They do have some great wins, like they beat Arizona, they beat Louisville, and then they obviously have that huge win over Auburn. They also beat Illinois late in the season, which was a weird game they scheduled. But anyway, and like I'm going to keep saying, got great young players like Cooper Flagg, Con Knippel, a freshman who's been really good, Kamon Malawach, who's been great. He runs the floor so hard and puts in great effort. He's going to be a lottery pick. Honestly, this is the thing about freshmen. Yeah, they're inexperienced, but I feel like this group, they've just gotten so much better throughout this season. From what I've seen, I don't care against the competition. This is not something that really bothers me. These guys have been mature. They've been locked in. You know, I watch for that type of stuff, and I feel like they have absolutely proven it. And then they've got a great mix of older guys, like Tyrese Proctor is their guard, who's been there for a while. Isaiah Evans is another really good freshman. I forgot to even mention him. And they've got guys like Mason Gillis from Purdue. Duke's got everything. They're a great team. They do everything. They play a great style of basketball, NBA style of team in college basketball. I think you can trust these guys. You're going to pick a team to probably get to the Final Four. I think they're a very solid pick. If you want to just go with an easy pick to win a national championship, I think Duke would be that answer. Now, I called Auburn the best team in college basketball earlier in a YouTube video, and I still really do believe in this team. They lost 3 of their Final 4 games in the season, which is a little concerning because no team's ever won a national championship doing that. That being said, they still have probably the best player in college basketball, Janai Broome. They still have a lot of great guards, Todd Pettiford, Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, Chad Baker-Mazara. I still want to believe in them. They've got great wins. I feel like they just need to lock in. They need to be mature. The team that has consistently stopped Auburn is themselves, and I definitely believe they can still get to a Final Four and potentially win a national championship. Yeah, it's never been done before. I feel like this tournament is kind of wide open. If they lock in, get past the first weekend, I still think that they could probably win a national championship, or again, at the very minimum, at least get to a Final Four. I think this is going to be a team that a lot of people fade, but I still just can't give up on this Auburn group. That's just my personal opinion. Probably find other people that 100% disagree with me on that, but I'm still a believer. Florida undoubtedly might be the hottest team in all of college basketball, and they're really starting to play their best basketball. They dominated through the SEC tournament. They're picking up big wins left and right. They beat Tennessee, Alabama twice recently. They beat Auburn without Elijah Martin, their second best guard. And it all starts with Walter Clayton. I think that he probably might be the best guard in the NCAA tournament, which is what you would want. They really do everything well. Currently on KenPom, they're the best team in college basketball offensively. Even their defense is already in the top 10 numbers, so they are playing on fire. And I just have a hard time believing anybody kind of slows them down, really, because they even blew through the best of the SEC. Elijah Martin's healthy now, and Alex Condon has emerged as a really high-level big man for them. And they've got other good guards as well, like Will Richard and Denzel Aberdeen. And I just have a hard time believing anybody slows these guys down, at least till the Final Four. They're playing that well of basketball. They did lose in the first round last year to Colorado in an incredible game. I don't know, maybe they do get tripped up, but I just have a really hard time believing that. They're playing high-level basketball compared to teams that win national championships, so can't really blame you if you have them winning the national championship right now. They're playing the best basketball probably of anybody. that's what you want heading into the NCAA tournament.
Talk about one of the best cultures in college basketball. That is Houston. And also, they're one of the hottest teams. They've lost only one game since November, and it was in overtime. They go on to win the Big 12, go on to win the Big 12 conference tournament, and they have been on absolute fire. They're big, they're physical, they're not afraid of you, they get after you on the rebounding. They've still got LJ Cryer, Juwan Roberts, and Emmanuel Sharp. This is a team that you can trust. I feel like they're probably not a national championship contender, but I definitely believe they're a Final Four contender for sure. It's just crazy. They started out their season 4-3. It was actually looking like it was probably going to be the first down year of Houston basketball that we've seen in a minute, and yet Kelvin Sampson rights the ship. They go on, have an incredible season yet again. So props to him. They've really got one of the best cultures in college basketball. I mean, this is a team that would probably be running stairs before games. They're a bunch of psychos down there. This is not a team that you want to play because they are so fundamentally sound. Just another great season for Houston. It's actually incredible to watch St. John's become the kings of the Big East, winning both the regular season and the conference tournament. I mean, this was a dormant program for a long time, and Rick Pitino came in there and in his second season has already done this. It's actually insane to witness. They are the best defensive team in college basketball. I would honestly say they're the best coach team in college basketball. With the passing of Lou Carnesecca this season, I mean, it feels like there's a little bit of magic in the air for this group because they're wearing his patch on their jerseys, and lo and behold, they have their best season honestly ever. So they're going to get after you on the offensive rebounding. They're going to defend the hell out of you. Led by RJ Louise, Kadari Richmond, Zubi Ejiofor. This is a very older, experienced team that plays extremely hard for their coach. I think they're for sure a Final Four team, potentially a national championship team. I think this is a team that you can trust to get to the second weekend for sure. So I'm a big fan of the St. John's team, and it's great to see their fan base absolutely deserved a season like this. I mean, they'd been waiting literally decades for this. Alabama made the Final Four last year, and they brought back a lot of the same team this year. Mark Sears, Grant Nelson. They run the fastest tempo in college basketball, and they want to shoot, shoot, and shoot. Now, the downside is their playing style. They're missing. It's super concerning because they really do play just kind of one style of basketball. However, that being said, it is a team that if they do get into a shooting slump, all it takes is for them to get a couple shots going in, and they really just can take over a game in an instant. I mean, they are an instant microwave type of team. Now, I do feel like the ceiling again this year is the Final Four for this team. I feel like that's kind of where I'd probably cap it off, maybe a title game, because I do kind of get concerned about their playing style. I know that it's fun to watch and it's NBA-like, but that's just my opinion. I feel like I'm in the minority on that. It's something that I do stand on, so we'll see. I do think that they're a very talented team, obviously. They brought in Cliff Amore, so it gives them a great post presence. They've also got other shooters like LeBaron Philon and Chris Youngblood. That's my opinion on Alabama. Another great season for them, and they can get hot at any moment. Michigan State is for sure a Final Four contending team. I feel like this is a very elite defensive group, and I feel like Tom Izzo has done a great job with them. Jaden Akins is their best player. He's their top defender. Also, the emergence of Jace Richardson, a freshman guard. He's been a great spark for them that they needed. I feel like that could probably take them over the top. Trey Holloman, he's a classic Izzo guy. Cohen Carr is one of the best wild card players in college basketball. He is the best dunker, super explosive. Huge knock on them is they're not a great three-point shooting team, but I honestly feel like a little bit of Izzo magic is in this group, and I feel like over this season they've gotten so much better. Yeah, they didn't win the Big Ten tournament, but I feel like they've had a super successful season. They really were starting to play their best basketball towards the end of the season as well. Maybe not a national championship contending team, but I definitely feel like they can at least probably get to a title game. I'm an Izzo believer. He's only got maybe a few more years left in him. Maybe this group comes back next year, and that's the real title contending team, but I definitely believe this is for sure a Final Four contending team. I really do believe that. Tennessee is maybe the most fundamentally sound defensive team in college basketball. Now, I felt like last year's team with Dalton Knecht was a little bit better, but yet again, Rick Barnes is doing it again. Also rumors that he may be retiring after the season. I don't know if I fully believe that, but I just wanted to put that out there. It's always a possibility, and I feel like he's the type of coach that really, deserves a run to another Final Four. I think the only time he's made it was when he was at Texas long ago. But you know what you're getting with this team. They're going to be physical. They're going to be great on defense. They've got a pesky point guard in Zakai Ziegler. They've also brought a lot of guys back from last year's team like Jamal Mashak, Jordan Gainey. I would say they're Final Four caliber. And in the role of Dalton Knecht, this season it's Chaz Lanier. He plays that role. He can get them a bucket when they need to. I think this is a very, very safe, solid option. I don't think they're going to blow you away when it comes to doing anything offensively. I do worry about them playing like a really good offensive team, but I do think they're a very solid basketball team. team. And this could be the year that Rick Barnes finally gets back to the Final Four. He's the type of coach that really would deserve that. Iowa State had another good season. They made the Sweet 16 last year. They're consistently a great program under TJ Otzelberger, and they've got a great backcourt. They've got Keyshawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, and Tamin Lipsey, who's a very annoying guard to play against. Now, they've been battling some injuries, like Gilbert's had a nagging injury for a while, so I'm a little concerned. I feel like they're a solid Sweet 16 team. Maybe they can slip their way through and get to a Final Four this year, but like I said, I'm getting concerned because the injuries. They've definitely picked up their play as of recently. They had a 3-game losing streak back in early February. I feel like as long as everybody stays healthy, I think they can at least get to the second weekend. Kentucky is a very different basketball program than compared in the past because John Calipari's not there. Mark Pope, this is his first season. He played at Kentucky, and the vibes were great to start the season. They were hot. They looked completely different. They were great offensively, but they have really been hit with injuries. I mean, Jackson Robinson, Kirk Kriisa, both out for the season. Lamont Butler, their point guard, has a shoulder injury that has been lingering him all year. They've got some great wins. They beat Duke, they beat Gonzaga, Louisville, Florida, knocking off Tennessee twice, but it's been super up and down. They really are going to have to rely on Otega Oweh and Kobe Brea, but I just feel like defensively, this is a group that's just not going to get far because they've not figured out their defense all season. I do think this is a step in the positive direction for Kentucky with a new head coach. I just don't know if I can trust this team getting to the second weekend. Texas Tech is a team that has a great center in JT Toppin. He's one of the best athletes in college basketball. And then they have a bunch of guards that surround him. And I feel like this is a team that when they get hot, when they're healthy, they're one of the better teams in college basketball. The problem is they just haven't been healthy all season. I do believe they will be once the tournament starts. They're also the only team that beat Houston in the Big 12 this season. So I believe they can be a second weekend team, maybe even a sleeper Final Four team. I don't think I'm brave enough to do that, but they are a team that, like I said, they've got a center, they've got their rock. As long as their guards are scoring, I feel like they can definitely be a second weekend team, but their guards are going to have to score, and they're also going to have to play pretty good defense. Wisconsin was upset in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year by James Madison, but this team is a little bit different, and it's because of the emergence of John Chanje, who transferred in. He's been incredible. He's had a fantastic season, and he's a ball handler that you can trust. They also have John Blackwell as well, so I call them the John team. I don't think they're going to get upset in the first round. I think that they're probably a second weekend team because you can put the ball in John Tanje's hands and he can get you a bucket. He's big, he's physical, and I feel like that's the perfect safety blanket that you would need. They don't turn the ball over. They're one of the best free throw shooting team in college basketball, so they're not going to really beat themselves. Texas A&M is a lot like they were last year. They're going to be physical. They're going to be one of the best rebounding teams in college basketball. However, that being said, they can get super bad offensively, and that's kind of a scary thing. They might get into a trap when shots are not falling, so they could get picked off. This is a team that has some great wins this season. I mean, they've beaten Texas Tech, Creighton, Purdue, even beat Auburn. And I like Buzz Williams, but I feel like sometimes they're just so bad offensively, they might get trapped. And that's where the potential of getting upset happens. So keep an eye out on that, especially depending on who they play in the first round. I feel like probably the cap I would put on this team would probably be like the Sweet 16. The Crab Five, as they call them, are one of the better teams in college basketball, and I really like their potential. Rodney Rice is outstanding. His running mate, Jacoby Gillespie, form a great backcourt. They also have one of the best front courts in college basketball with Derek Queen and Julian Reese. I think this is a team that could get pretty far in the NCAA tournament. I feel like they're a sleeper Final Four team for sure. I like their potential. I really do. Kevin Willard is maybe the most underrated coach in college basketball. The guy won at Seton Hall of all places, and I feel like he just doesn't get enough credit as he deserves. I feel like this is a really talented team. They're big, they're physical. That's what you want. So keep an eye out on them for making a second weekend and even being a team that could potentially knock off a 1 or a 2 seed. Michigan is one of the harder teams for me to figure out. They have a very interesting starting five because they run 2 big men, and one of them, Danny Wolf, basically can be a point guard sometimes. So it's really interesting the type of offense that they run. Huge concern for them has been guard play. And in fact, they even ended their season on a 3-game losing streak and things were just not looking good. Definitely a candidate to be upset in the NCAA tournament, but did go on and played really well in the Big Ten tournament, kind of flipped their script. So I don't necessarily know really what to even project with this Michigan team. I do think they can present matchup problems just because of their style, but I also just don't trust their guards necessarily to take over a game. I don't know. This is a really tough one to figure out. I feel like I would probably say they win a game. I don't think I'm going to have them going that far. Arizona is another really hard one to figure out because this can be a very streaky team. Sometimes they look really good when they're scoring. Sometimes you get a lot of cold streaks with these guys, and it's just like, are they going to get upset? They're just tough to figure out. In fact, they even started their season 4-5, and yeah, things did not look good. Then they started winning and winning and winning, and then later in Big 12 play, they started losing and losing. So they've had a really up and down season. If Caleb Love goes off, they can, sneak by, win a game, get to a second weekend. Not projecting them to get to a Final Four, but I think they could win a game. But they also have proven before that they've underdelivered in March sometimes, so they could probably get trapped and maybe be a team that gets upset. So I would stay very cautious with Arizona. They haven't made an Elite Eight under Tommy Lloyd's. I don't think this is going to be the team. You never know. You could get hot in March. Maybe Caleb Love just starts going off. Let's talk about last year's runner-up. Now this team brought back Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, and they're the best pick and roll duo in college basketball, honestly. But I feel like a lot of their younger guys haven't necessarily developed. Did lose some players to the transfer portal, and I just feel like they have a lot of weaknesses when it comes to, if you can stop that pick and roll, I think that they're definitely a beatable team. I mean, I do believe that Matt Painter is one of the best coaches in the sport. Traditionally, Purdue is one of those teams where everybody loves to, pick against them, so they'll probably be a trendy upset pick. I believe their ceiling is probably the Sweet 16, just because they really do have a lack of options if it's not Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn. Louisville is finally good again after going 8-24 last year and really having a bad time under Kenny Payne. They went 27-7 this year. They lost 2 times since December. They ran through the ACC. Yeah, the ACC was bad, but they still did it. And it's just a phenomenal job that Pat Kelsey has done. I think their fans will be happy regardless of what happens in the NCAA tournament. I do think there's a clear ceiling to this team because they've suffered some injuries throughout the season. See if Rain Smith is back. What a season. They brought in a lot of transfer seniors, so I think they're experienced enough to win a game. Maybe get to a Sweet 16, but I think that would probably be the ceiling for this group. Here is some Clemson basketball propaganda for you. Shout out Cliff Spammons, but this Tigers group, man, they are a really, really tough out. They've just been one of the consistent models of success in college basketball. They're a really good defensive group, and Brad Burnell, wow, he really lived long enough for Clemson to become one of the premier programs in college basketball after going to the Elite Eight last year. This is a very, very good group. Now, sadly, Dylan Hunter, one of their better players, broke his hand, and his pairing with Victor Lakin was one of the best duos statistically in college basketball, actually. So I'm not going to give up on this team because I still trust like a team with Chase Hunter as their go-to guard. And I just feel like they're a really good defensive group. I trust them. I know that there's going to be people that don't. I just have no reason to believe they're not going to be in every single game that they're in. I would probably take away the Final Four that I was probably projecting. I know it's a very ambitious to think Clemson could make the Final Four, but I felt like they were that good potentially. Missouri literally lost every single SEC game last season, but here they are in the NCAA tournament. Dennis Gates loves to flip his rosters around, and he brought in a ton of transfers. Mark Mitchell from Duke, Caleb Grill, Tamar Bates, Tony Perkins, Marquez Warwick, completely flipped the roster around, and they started winning games, and then lo and behold, they got enough wins in the SEC and even beat Kansas while they were at it, and they clinched themselves a spot in the NCAA tournament. This is a really good offensive group. I think that they're the type of team, I think they're projected on the 7 to 10 range, so I probably won't be taking them to win 2, but I think they can at least win a game. Oregon just hides up there in the Northwest. Now, I feel like they're probably going to be seated a little bit higher than I probably would have loved. Oregon always does well in the underdog role. I feel like they might be seated a little too high, but this is your typical Oregon team. Jackson Shell said he is your typical Oregon guard, and then Nate Biddle looks like he's been playing college hoops since 2016. They've got some older players. They've got some great wins, like they beat Texas A&M, Maryland, Alabama even, but they had a horrible 5-game losing streak in late January, early February. Probably not going to be taking them to go past maybe a game. Might even be a team that I think gets upset by one of the Cinderella teams potentially. Marquette has a really good backcourt with Cam Jones, one of the National Player of the Year candidates, Stevie Mitchell, and Chase Ross. There's a very clear ceiling to this group. Past 2 years, they've gotten a 2 seed, and they haven't gotten past the Sweet 16 in either year, and I feel like those teams were better than this year's team. Once again, they're a 3-point shooting team that gets back, but they just don't have the post players that you would need. That's kind of killed them in the past, so I'm just not going to buy this team goes past any further than the Sweet 16. But I do want to say I respect their culture. I love what Shaka does as a coach. I mean, he's super old school in his ways, which I really like as the sport has changed, but due to that, I definitely think there is a ceiling. St. Mary's is exactly like they always are. Another impressive season for the Gales and Randy Bennett. They're one of the best rebounding teams in college basketball. They still have got Augustus Marshallonis and Mitchell Saxon, but I think there's a very clear ceiling when it comes to St. Mary's, as always. Whenever they play a team with a lot of athletes, that's usually what the road ends for them. And I just don't see this group being the one that, breaks through. Randy Bennett, though, what a phenomenal coach he really is. They're consistently always good. I mean, they had 2 wins over Gonzaga this year in the regular season. They just got caught by them in the conference tournament. So I think they're obviously not going to beat themselves, but if they play a team with athletes, I think that's probably where it's going to end. UCLA is back after missing last year, and it's been a really up and down season for them. Mick Cronin freaked out so badly midway through the season. It made headlines because he called his team out basically. But I'll give them props because they were 11-6 at one point and finished 22-10. So they got better. It was a newer group this year. Dylan Andrews was the only starter on this team that was there last year. They're going to beat you defensively. I'm not wowed by this team, but they did pick off some teams like Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Gonzaga. But I honestly felt like those were some trips that those teams made out to UCLA. And I feel like that might be a factor in why they picked them off. So I'm just not going to pick them to go far at all. I feel like this team definitely lacks the talent of past Mick Cronin teams. BYU is playing some of the best basketball in all of college hoops. They are 10-1 since February 8th. They've beaten Iowa State twice, Kansas, and Arizona. Now they're led by head coach Kevin Young. He's new. He just got there. He came over from the NBA. He's highly touted. And this is a team that once they kind of figured out their rhythm, they have absolutely been one of the best teams in college basketball. I think this is easily the best BYU team I've ever seen probably since at least Jimmer was there. They're going to be super efficient offensively, especially from two. I think this is a team that can very easily make the second weekend. Now, if you can lock them up, I think that they'll probably struggle against like a team that is really good defensively. But yeah, I definitely like this BYU team. Illinois is one of those teams that's in the middle of the pack that's so hard to figure out because they have a high-end talent in Kasparis Yakichonis, who really is their go-to guy. He kind of does everything for them. And they've got some great wins this year. I mean, they've beaten the likes of Missouri, Arkansas, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Purdue. But I feel like they kind of, have a lack of athleticism as past year's teams have had. I think they're good enough to win a game. They're projected to be like on the 6th line. I think they're definitely good enough to beat an 11 seed, but I'm not going to be picking these guys to go to like a Final Four by any means or an Elite Eight. I just feel like, last year's team was much better than this version's team. And, once they played UConn, it was kind of lights out for them. So I'm just not expecting a deep run for Illinois. Kansas was the preseason #1 team in college basketball. And I would say this was definitely a disappointing season for them. It's the same team as last year, basically a team built around Hunter Dickinson. I do think they were probably a little overhyped. Some of the transfers they brought in just weren't as good. I mean, Zeke Mayo was, I would say, clearly their best transfer. This was a very up and down season for them. I do like them to win a game. I think that they're still talented enough to do that. I do trust Bill Self to do that. I think they could even give a 2 seed a run for their money. It is crazy that this team beat Duke and Michigan State this season, but I just don't see them getting to the second weekend. All right, we're finally to the 2-time reigning national champion. I know, right? Took forever to get to them, which is just crazy because the expectation this season was be a top 3 seed at the very minimum, and yet they're probably going to end up on the 7-10 range, which is crazy. Now, this has been a very up and down season for them. I mean, like if you remember, they got swept at Maui. I mean, they've just not been anywhere nearly as good defensively as the past 2 years. This team's a little bit different, but a little bit the same. They brought back a lot of the same team, at least like the role player guys, not like the star players. And then they even added like Liam McNeely, who's a menace. I mean, he's been really good for them, but it's just been disappointing, which is a funny thing to say because they still did make the NCAA tournament. They didn't necessarily have a horrible season. In fact, they ended their season on a 5-game winning streak before losing to Creighton in the Big East tournament. So I think they're gonna be a very, very trendy, Sweet 16 team, beat the 1 seed, beat the 2 seed type of team. I could see it because I still trust Dan Hurley, but I don't think they're gonna be winning a national championship for sure. I think that's rolled out of the table. Memphis has just completely flown under the radar this season. Maybe that's just because they're playing in the American, but I'll give them props. They've been much better than advertised. I feel like there were some concerns coming into this season because they had kind of a chaotic offseason, but I'll be honest, they locked it down. PJ Haggerty has been incredible for them. They've got some great wins, like they beat Michigan State, Clemson when they were healthy, Ole Miss. Now, Tyrese Hunter did get injured in the American Conference tournament, so keep an eye out on that, but I like the pieces they brought in the transfer portal, and the guard like PJ, I mean, he can heat up and will them to a win. I definitely think they could get to a Sweet 16. This is the 3rd straight appearance from Mississippi State in the NCAA tournament, and they started their season really hot. They were 14-1, they looked good, but they definitely were humbled in SEC play. They rely on their best player, Josh Hubbard, and I honestly felt like probably last year's team was a little bit better and they lost in the first round. They have a nice win over Memphis, but I don't think this team's gonna go far. Ole Miss is dancing in Chris Beard's 2nd season. Now their best player, Malik Dia, is their center. This is obviously going to be a team where they have a really good coaching staff that will have them prepared no matter what you think about them. They've got some great wins this season, like they've beaten BYU, Louisville, and Bama, and Tennessee. I don't necessarily think they're going to blow you away athletically by any means. This is a very disciplined basketball team, and I definitely think they're always going to have that coaching advantage. So just keep an eye out on that. I'm not predicting them to go to the second weekend by any means, but I definitely think they're probably good enough to win a game. I don't necessarily love them if they're going to end up like on the 6th line, but if they end up like on the 8-9, 7-10 range, I think that they'll probably at least win a game. I'll be honest, Gonzaga is one of the hardest teams for me to figure out on here. In my opinion, I thought they were a preseason Final Four team. Even currently metrically, they are ranking like in the top 10 on a lot of analytical websites. But just feel like they're so hard to figure out because there's obviously talent there. Graham Ike is one of the best bigs in the country. They're really great backcourt on paper. Ryan Nembhard and Nolan Hickman. I mean, that looks good in theory. They've just lost so many games this year, and I just have been very underwhelmed with them throughout the entire year just watching them. Like, they lost to St. Mary's twice in the regular season. They lost to Kentucky, UConn, West Virginia, UCLA, Santa Clara, and Oregon State. Just feels like they're just not enjoying basketball together as a group. I don't know. That's just me. I have not been impressed, and I'm somebody that genuinely really likes Gonzaga. Just haven't seen with them. I feel like they're a step below even last year's team. They're going to be underseeded for sure. They're going to be on the 7 to 10 range. So I think they can match up and give a real test to a 1 or a 2 seed. I think they can at least get to the Sweet 16, but I'm not seeing them going any further than that. Creighton took a step back from the past 2 years, but they still have Stephen Ashworth and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Even casual fans know Ryan Kalkbrenner. He's been there forever. I feel like they're going to be that pesky 8 or 9 seed that you do not want to see if you're a 1 seed. Like, if you can stop Ashworth and Kalkbrenner, you can probably win. They're going to need Jemiah Neal and Jason Green to really step up for them if they want to win. Greg McDermott is one of the best coaches in college basketball. They're consistently a Sweet 16 team at the very minimum. VCU out of the A-10 had a great season. They lost 2 games since the new year to St. Louis and Dayton, and they are really starting to play some of their best basketball. I'll be honest, I love their backcourt. Max Shulga, Joe Bamsley, Philip Russell. They've been playing really well and have been playing college basketball, all these guys, since 2021. And they've got veterans. They're older. I really like this group. I think they're a sneaky Sweet 16 team. We'll see where they end up on the seed line. But yeah, the A-10 last year, they had 2 teams in the round of 32. So keep an eye out on VCU. Let's talk about Rick Pitino's son, Richard Pitino's team. Honestly believe last year's team was much better. I mean, JT Toppin was on that team, but they still have Donovan Dent, one of the best guards in all of college basketball. And I feel like he can absolutely keep them in a game, but I just don't necessarily believe this is a second weekend team. They've got some great wins over UCLA and VCU, but I just feel like they've kind of come back down to earth as the season has progressed. Got a great fan base for sure. They're very passionate about their team. They will travel, but I just have a hard time believing this is probably a second weekend team. Utah State is on their 4th different head coach since 2019, and all 4 of these guys have made the NCAA tournament. Now they're under first-year head coach Jared Calhoun, and I really just believe these guys are just happy to be here, honestly. Utah State started out their season really hot, but I feel like they've definitely cooled off defensively, and I'm probably not going to be picking them to win a game. Vanderbilt is led under first-year head coach Mark Byington, who was at James Madison last year that pulled off an upset against Wisconsin. And a funny thing about this team is that their entire roster was listed as guards heading into this season because they specifically wanted everybody to kind of be a ball handler. Now, I definitely think they overachieved this season for sure. I think they kind of did benefit a little bit from the SEC being so good this year. I think they're probably going to be projected to be like a 10 or 11 seed. That's about all I see this team doing. I don't even necessarily think they'll be able to pull off an upset in the first round. They'll be a trendy team just because the name brand, but I think they just kind of overexceeded expectations. Baylor was a preseason Final Four caliber team that really underdelivered this year. They have some great wins and they looked good at times, but as the season has gone along and teams got better, I feel like Baylor's one of those teams where they kind of got worse, and a lot of their older guys that they paid a bunch of money for transfer wise, it's really their freshman Robert Wright and VJ Edgecombe. Obviously he's going to be a lottery pick. Those are the guys that when they rely on them, they can probably win a game in the NCAA tournament. That's about it. I feel like there's a very clear ceiling with this team. I don't necessarily think they're that great, but there's also talent there that other teams might not be able to match up fully against in a game. Arkansas is being led by head coach John Calipari. Yeah, it's so weird to say that still, but this team did not start off their season well at all. I mean, it was bad at one point. They were 11-7. Everybody was really clowning them, but you know what? They did get better, and they've had a ton of injuries. I mean, Boogie Flan got hurt. I think he's going to be out for the rest of the tournament. Duthiaro, their best player, got hurt in late February. I don't even know if he's going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, especially in the first 2 games potentially that they would play in the first weekend. They've got talent in their backcourt. I mean, DJ Wagner was a highly recruited prospect coming out of high school, and Janelle Davis was on FAU. They've still got Trevon Brazil, Jonas Adu. I think they can win a game. I think they've gotten better, and especially keep an eye out if you're filling out your bracket. Make sure you figure out if Duthiaro is playing, because I think if he's playing, I think they can win a game, but I'm not going to be taking them to go far. I just think they've been hit with injuries so much, but they didn't give up on their season, so I'm going to give them props for that. Georgia is back in the NCAA tournament, and Mike White, their head coach, has done a great job with this group, honestly. They're led by star freshman Asa Newell. He's at center. And this is a very good defensive team. They also have some great wins this season over St. John's, Kentucky, and Florida, but twice this season they had 4-game losing streaks, so it was kind of hard to exactly figure out what this team was. I do think they're a good basketball team. They do rely on Asa Newell, and they want to get rebounds on the offensive end. So if they get into a game where they're just bricking shots, I think they could probably be in trouble, but I could honestly see them probably winning at least least a game. Oklahoma has finally made the NCAA tournament under Porter Moser after he came over there in 2021. Now, this team even won the battle for Atlantis. The SEC was such a gauntlet. At times they looked pretty good, at times they looked pretty bad, but it comes down to their freshman point guard, Jeremiah Fears. He's going to have to put the team on his back in some cases. He's got a lot of older guys around him, but he's definitely the most consistent scorer on this team. So I think he's obviously good enough to get them a game in the first four. Maybe if they're on the 10 line, probably win a game there, maybe. But that's kind of like all I kind of see Oklahoma doing. Xavier got super hot towards the end of the season. I'm glad they made the NCAA tournament. When Zach Fremantle was healthy, they were a good team. Ryan Conwell was playing really well, their guard. I think they're the type of team that if they make like the first four, I think they could probably win a game in the first four and then potentially win another game. I think they have the makeup to do that with Sean Miller, very experienced head coach. I thought they were really starting to play well towards the end of the season, so I'm glad they made it. I think they can at least win a game, maybe two. Texas is in the NCAA tournament, and they had a pretty disappointing SEC season to say the least. Now, the jury is still out on if Rodney Terry is good enough for the Texas job. They definitely got lucky making the NCAA tournament by winning 2 games in the SEC conference tournament. I believe that is what got them in. They do have some high-end talent like Tremont Mark, Arthur Kaluma, but it's advancing with Rodney Terry. That's where the real question is. I don't necessarily know with Texas. They're hard to figure out. Probably a first 4 team. If so, it depends on their matchup, but I'm probably not going to be picking Texas unless they maybe play like a Mountain West school. San Diego State is once again a really good defensive team. In fact, they have wins over Creighton and Houston, but they just were never consistent enough in Mountain West play, and in their conference tournament, they lost instantly to Boise State. So I don't necessarily know if they're trending in the right direction heading into the NCAA tournament. It's like there's some other teams out of the Mountain West that have been playing better. They're definitely not as talented as they have been in the past. I think they'll probably lose in the first 4, but I don't necessarily think they're going to be going far at all. North Carolina had a very up and down season. I feel like at times they've looked good because they've got a great backcourt sometimes, but sometimes they just do not play defense. Obviously, RJ Davis is one of the best point guards in college basketball as a senior. He's been there for so long. Just some of the other guys around him don't always step up. Younger guys haven't been consistent. They sneak in. I think they're good enough to win a game or two. I feel like they've stuck together as a group. I don't necessarily know what to think of them. I did think they were really starting to play better towards the end of the season, except for like maybe playing Duke. But other than that, I thought they started to look better. So take that for what you will. I don't think they're going to a Final Four. I don't think they're getting to a second weekend, but I think they could potentially win a game or two. Colorado State might straight up be the hottest team in college basketball. If not Florida, it's probably them, and it's led by Neat Clifford. Now, this team is on a 10-game winning streak, I believe. They won the Mountain West Conference tournament and have been playing the best basketball in the Mountain West. It's crazy. They probably weren't going to make the tournament, and yet here they are. And I believe this is the sleeper team. How every year we get like an NC State that wins their conference tournament and goes far, or an Oregon State back in 2021. I feel like this is the same kind of situation. I feel like they're going to be super underseeded. Nico Medved is a really good basketball coach. Won the first 4 last year. I really hope they end up like on the 12 seed line. This is not a team you want to play. They are playing super smart basketball, and they are on fire. I could definitely see them getting to the Sweet 16. This is a great Cinderella candidate. Drake is back in the NCAA tournament for the 3rd straight year, but this team is very different from the past 2. That might be a good thing considering they haven't been able to get over the hump. Not that there was anything wrong with the past 2 years, but this team is led by first-year head coach Ben McCollum, who came over from Division II. He brought his entire roster basically, and all these guys came in and started starting for them, and they started winning. And I really like this group. They have wins over Vanderbilt, Miami, and then they have a huge win over Kansas State. They play a specific style of basketball. They played a super slow tempo, which can be very frustrating to go up against. On KenPom, they're actually top 25 in both offensive and defensive rebounding percentage, which is great. They're also the 10th best team in college basketball at forcing turnovers, led by Bennett Sturts, their best player, and they only have 3 losses on the season. Ben McCollum is going to get a high major coaching job right after this, which he deserves. He's a very, very good coach. And this team has played so much basketball together as a group. I think they've got that perfect mix that you would look for when it comes to pulling off an upset. If there's anything to scare you, it might be them getting overwhelmed athletically, but I think that their style of basketball is going to keep them in a game. If you need a team that is very locked in as a group, it would be this group. UC San Diego had an incredible season. This is a program that's only been Division I since 2020, and I believe this is their first year of eligibility, and they made the NCAA tournament. They are a really good basketball team. They're led by Anna Ananiwa Tate-Jones, who's one of the most efficient players in college basketball. Also, their guard Hayden Gray is a great defender and leads the team in forcing turnovers. This is a turnover-heavy team. They have a super strong starting 5. Thing to know, this is a second-half basketball team. They've done this over and over again this season. I believe that the momentum will be on their side in the second half. They've got a really good coaching staff. It's crazy to see what this team has done. They're probably going to be seated a little bit higher than I would have liked. Man, they would have been such a great 13 seed, but again, they've had a great season. and they're going to give anybody that they play a really tough out, especially in the second half. Grand Canyon is going to be a super underseeded team. They pulled off an upset last year in March Madness, beating St. Mary's, and played Alabama pretty well. I think they're going to be very underseeded. Tyon Grant Foster, their best player, missed time this year, and he came back for the WAC tournament. They brought back a lot of the same team from last year. This is a very, very upset potential team for sure, especially if they get the right seeding. This is absolutely a fan base that will travel, and I can't wait to watch what type of matchup they get. The Huss Bus is riding the nation's longest winning streak out of the Big South Conference, led by head coach Alan Huss, and this group really should have made the NCAA tournament last year. They are an all-offensive team. That's what you should know. They are deep. They will throw a lot of guys at you. They also have the nation's leading rebounder. Honestly, if they get hot, I think they could pull an upset. Now, I think they're probably going to be seated a little too high and probably get too good of a team to play against, but they definitely are a program that has invested heavily in college basketball. They legit play in a palace. I mean, their arena is so nice, brand new. So for a mid-major team out of the Big South, I definitely think that there's a lot of potential. And also, did I mention they're riding the nation's longest winning streak? I think High Point is a very good candidate to pull off an upset. McNeese is back in the tournament this year after being one of the trendy upset picks last year. This year's team is a little bit different. You know, Will Wade's teams, they always play with a havoc style of basketball. They like to play bully ball, get after you, play up tempo. So if they play a team with athletes, I don't necessarily think they're going to pull up an upset like they could have done last year because they played Gonzaga. But this year they lost to Mississippi State, a tournament team, by 3 points. They also hung around with Alabama, and they played at Alabama back in like November. So I like their odds to pull an upset if they play a bad team. They also have a viral student manager that this team is clearly obsessed with. They've got a very strong team bond. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Liberty is back in the NCAA tournament, and this is a team that lets it rip. And I feel like if you let them play their style of basketball, you're not athletic against them, I think that they could probably be a great potential for an upset. This is actually their second season in the Conference USA. They moved up in play, and this is a program that kept winning. Richie McKay is a really good coach. They have 2 great wins over Kansas State and McNeese, who's in the NCAA tournament, obviously. So this is another team that I feel like it has great potential to be an upset pick. Their guards are smaller, so I am a little bit concerned about that when it comes to beating a, like I said, athletic team. But this is another coach that I trust and has pulled off an upset before, so keep an eye out on Liberty. Akron is coming out of the MAC, and wow, they had a great season. They only lost 1 conference game, and they really are the model of success, or at least one of them, in mid-major basketball. They have an incredible coach in John Gross. He's one of the elite mid-major level coaches, and they made the NCAA tournament last year. The real concern with this team is that they're very undersized, one of the smallest teams in college basketball, but I do believe in John Gross, and I think they'll at least have a good scout ready to go. Now, will they have the guys to keep up? Maybe not, but I at least do trust their coaching staff to have them at least giving a battle. Yale is back in the NCAA tournament again. They pulled off a huge upset last year, beating Auburn, and James Jones, been there since 2000. They didn't necessarily dominate the Ivy League tournament. They had 2 very close calls. John Poyakitis is back. Danny Wolf is obviously not there. He's on Michigan, but I think they could probably make it a little interesting. I do think that a team will probably be prepared for them because, they've seen them pull off an upset before. So I'll probably not be picking them just because it's so hard to pull off 2 upsets 2 years in a row. Lipscomb is a do everything well type of team. They're not going to wow you athletically, but I don't think they're going to be a team that necessarily beats themselves because of their style of basketball that they play. Now, I'm not going to be picking them because I just don't think they're going to wow you athletically, and I think they'll probably get overwhelmed with a full 40 minutes against a high major team. And they played Arkansas and Kentucky this season, and they really weren't able to keep up. But I do think they're very disciplined. They play pretty well when it comes to team basketball. I just don't think they're going to be able to hang for a full 40. UNC Wilmington is back after making the tournament 2 times under Kevin Keatts in the mid-2010s. Takeo Siddle, their head coach, has done a great job in his 4 years there, I believe. They finally broke through. They're led by their guard, Donovan Newby, and I think they're going to be underseeded. I think this is a pretty good group. If they end up on the 14 line, I would say they're going to be probably a trendy upset pick. And maybe if I'm feeling bold enough, I could see them probably being one of the 14 seeds to pull off an upset, but I'll probably hold on because I'm not brave enough to do it. Troy is coming out of the Sun Belt and are proof that the state of Alabama is a basketball state. They're a team that is going to play havoc, get offensive rebounds. They're actually the 5th best team in college basketball, crashing the glass on KenPom. Now, their best player, Tatum Conaway, can lead them. They also have brothers in their starting lineup, which is really cool. Now, if you let them take over a game, playing their style, I think that they could probably make things interesting, but if you can handle them like Houston, Oregon, and Arkansas did, then I think it's going to be pretty hard for them to probably win a game. game. Montana won Starch Madness and are back after making it in 2018 and 2019. Both times they oddly enough played Michigan and lost in the first round. But this group, I feel like they're just probably not going to be good enough defensively to win a game. That's where a lot of their numbers are super weak metrically, and I think that's a concern, plus their lack of size. And the Big Sky just hasn't produced upset winners in the Big Dance in a long time, so probably going to pass on Montana. Wofford is back in the Big Dance, and if you remember back in 2019, they were one of the best teams in college basketball, led by all these guys that transferred to Virginia Tech under Mike Young, obviously, and iconically Fletcher McGee, if you remember him. Now, this team is led by second-year head coach Dwight Perry. The Terriers run one of the slower paces in college basketball. They get after you on the glass. They lead on Ken Pom in both of those ratings. Now, I'm going to say I don't think they're going to be able to hang with a team because they got wrecked by Duke earlier this year. They lost to like some other teams in the tournament. But what you will know about this team is they have a big man that shoots granny style, so you'll be able to enjoy that while you're watching some games. Robert Morris is back in the tournament for the first time in a decade. Head coach Andy Toole has been there since 2011 and was there, if you remember, for their NIT win over Kentucky in 2013. What a special moment that was, if you remember it. Now, this team only won 10 games last year, but they won the Horizon League as the #1 overall seed. And if you remember last year, we had Oakland upsetting out of the Horizon League. I would probably say I don't expect them to pull off the upset this year because I felt like the Horizon League was pretty bad this season. Bryant is led by head coach Phil Martelli Jr. in his second year. This team actually has Earl Timberlake. If you remember him, he was on Memphis. Now, this is, again, one of the lower seeds, so I'm not going to be projecting them to probably win a game, but they do have a really good head coach. They definitely have a high major talent in Earl, so they could probably make things pretty interesting. They play one of the fastest tempos in college basketball. The Omaha Mavericks have finally made the NCAA tournament for their first time in program history after moving to Division I in 2011, and what a season it's been for them. They actually started 4-9, and after that 9th loss, they started a tradition where they would beat up trash cans after every game and really captivated this group. It really took over college basketball Twitter and the internet, and it became such a cool little tradition in college basketball. These guys were just beating up trash cans, and I don't know, there's just some sort of divine magic with this group, honestly. And I'll be honest, if they're a low 15, 16 seed, I mean, I doubt I'll pick them to win a game, but if I was going to pick a team that would probably be a 15 or 16, I think it would be this group. You need a little bit of magic and a little bit of luck, and I think this is the perfect mix of something like that that could probably take over the NCAA tournament if they were to pull off a massive upset. American comes out of the Patriot League, the same league that has sent Colgate literally every single year. So they're not making the tournament, but American is. It's the first time in over a decade they're making the NCAA tournament, and they're led by their senior center, Matt Rogers, who honestly could probably get them a win if they play in the first 4, but that's about all I see these guys doing when it comes to winning games in March. I think that they're probably a team that could win a first 4 game, but that's about it. Norfolk State is coming out of the MEAC, and this team actually beat High Point this season, who's in the NCAA tournament. Now, I'm not going to be picking them to win a game, maybe winning if they're in the first 4, but I think that's probably about the ceiling. We have another Alabama school in the NCAA tournament. Alabama State comes out of the SWAC. Now, they beat Omaha this year, probably going to end up in the first 4. Probably about all I see them doing is winning a game there. Potentially, they were not the best team in the SWAC this year. That was Southern, but they lost in their conference tournament, but props to them for at least winning the SWAC. Mount St. Mary's is led by first-year head coach Donnie Lind, and they were not supposed to win the MAC conference tournament, but they ended up doing so, and even this team holds a win over Miami, Florida, which kind of caused Jim Larinaga to retire. I'm pretty sure it was before that. So yeah, that's their season. I think they can win a game in the first 4, but that's probably where I'm going to draw the line. Shout out my guy Sam Fetterman, the man of the MAC. His article helped me learn about Mount St. Mary's. Southern Illinois Edwardsville is making their first ever trip to the Big Dance out of the Ohio Valley. I'm definitely not expecting them to win a game, but they could if they're in the first 4 potentially. The Ohio Valley is not a strong league at all, so definitely not expecting anything, maybe a first 4 win. That's about it. St. Francis is making their first tournament appearance since 1991. They're in the same conference as FDU, who had a major upset in 2023. Now, they shot one of the worst games in the Northeast title game and won all 3 of their conference tournament games by 3 points, so I highly doubt they win a game. Well, congratulations, you've made it through the entire video. So proud of you. Thank you for listening. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if you haven't already, please follow me on X, please follow me on Instagram, and remain #locked in March all the way through the end of this NCAA tournament. And another thing that I would like to add is that please never take this tournament for granted. So much change in college athletics. Still feels like this is the one thing that kind of remains the same. So March is a beautiful thing. The whole NCAA tournament is incredible, especially the way that it is. We don't really want to see it change. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace.